Hey everybody, it's Trish. Welcome to my first video tutorial. For today's tutorial, I chose this really simple glass and leather bracelet. As you can see, I've already made a few of them because they're really easy and they're fun to make. For this project, you need some 0.5mm leather. I always have extra leather kicking around from different knotting projects I've made, and as long as you have a piece that's going to be big enough to go over your wrist and around once, plus a few more inches, that's enough for a one wrap bracelet. If you want a longer bracelet, make sure you measure it so that you can wrap it around a few times. Then you need a button. Make sure that the buttonhole is large enough to fit the 0.5mm leather. And lastly but not least, you need some beads. I've chosen some 6mm fire polished glass because they accommodate my leather really well. You can choose any beads that you have that fit the leather through. Just a warning, different colors of leather are actually a little thicker or thinner depending on the color and the coating. So make sure you test your beads before you settle on what you'd like to use for your project. I always choose my leather color first and then test out different styles and sizes of beads to make sure of what will work. I also chose some silver plated brass spacers because they add a nice little metallic touch to the bracelet. Once you learn this technique, you'll have a lot of fun trying out different beads, and at the end of the video, I'll show you the different styles of two-hole beads that you can use to make this bracelet as well. You might end up making more than a few. So let's get started. Let's talk about what tools we want to use for today's project. I've got my trusty beading awl for any knots in the leather that might come up, my bead scoop for scooping my beads, my nice Xuron shears. These are great thread cutters that are great for cutting the leather, especially at the very tip if you want to get an angled tip to get through your beads, and my hypo cement. We'll use the hypo cement to glue our knots at the end to make sure our bracelet is secure. Here are two examples of this bracelet that I've already made. This first one features a really cute brass ohm button and some pyramid stud beads that are this nice white matte finish. This one is similar to the example we're going to make today. It's got a cute little clock button and some fire polish beads with some little brass plated spacers in between. The first thing that we want to do is take our leather and get our button on there. Take one end of your leather and pass it through your buttonhole. Grab the tips of your leather and pull your button to the center of the leather. This is where we want to keep the button to make our bracelet an even bracelet. To hold the button there, we just need to make a knot. It sounds a lot harder than it looks. All you need to do is make a simple overhand knot, make the loop, and pass your button through the loop, just like you would be tying a shoe. Now, how do we get our knot to be right behind the button? Place your finger through the knot and hold tightly, and then just pull. Eventually the knot will get close to being behind the button, and then just scooch it up close with your fingers until it's right behind it. Ta-da! If it gets too far back, say your knot ends up here, just use your beading awl, stick it through the knot, and loosen it up and slide it down. This beading awl is great for a lot of different things. This one is a tulip beading awl. I pretty much love all of Tulip's products. They have great beading awls and they have great beading needles, which we'll cover in another beading tutorial. So now that we've got our adorable button on here, we have to decide what kind of pattern we'd like to make our beads follow in the bracelet. I don't like to plan too much ahead of time. I'm one of those kind of beaders, so for this one I just kind of put in different combinations of numbers of beads. You are welcome to choose any kind of pattern that you would like. Now, if you want your two threads to look the same, I recommend stringing your beads on one bead at a time onto each one of these cords. If you want to do different patterns on each side, you're welcome to do one strand and then the other strand, since they won't have to match. It's easier for me to do them one bead at a time because I'll remember to make each side of the bracelet match. To get started, just go ahead and start stringing some beads on here. I find it easier to start with threading on a few of the spacer beads because they're smaller, and I'll show you why in just a sec. So we've got our spacer beads, and we'll pull them tightly up against the button. The bracelet will naturally narrow at the spot where the button is, so you don't want to have your beads be too large in this spot, or else it will be hard to keep the pattern straight. This just helps the end to meet nicely up front, and then we can start adding our larger beads. I'm just going to do a fun combination of blue and green. It's also a good idea to check that length when you finish your bracelet, and I'll show you how to do that once we've got all of our beads on. So go ahead and string the rest of your beads. Okay, welcome back. I have an important confession to make, and that's that I forgot to tell you about one really important tool that I'm using today and that I use pretty much every day, and that's my bead on it board. Here's my very first one. I can't really bead without them anymore. That's how cool they are. Check them out on beadonitboard.com. So now that we've got our beads strung on, I'm pretty sure that this is the measurement that I want to fit my wrist. But a great way to double check it is to just hold my cords together at the very end where the beads meet, because that's where we're actually going to tie a knot, and just drape it over my wrist. As long as the spot where my knot is going to be made is pretty close to the button and is at a comfortable tightness, then you're ready to go to finish your bracelet. If you'd like it to be a little looser, add a few more beads. If you'd like it to be tighter, take a few out. We're going to make our knot at the very end in the same way that we made our knot at the beginning to attach the button. So hold your cords together and tie a knot just like you were tying a knot in any other thread. Once again, you want to shift the knot down so that it's very close to where the beads meet. And you can use your fingers to just kind of shimmy it along to where it needs to be. It's okay if these are kind of wobbly and separate, because when they're laying on your wrist, they'll come together and lay just fine. I'm now realizing that my blue and green is a great Seahawks color pattern. It's accidental, but it works for my area, so we're going to roll with it. Go Hawks! So we've got our knot tightly on there, our beads are secure, and we want to make a little loop so that we can put our button through and make a closure. If you have ever made a leather wrap bracelet before, we're going to make our button loop in the same way those are done. If you haven't, that's okay. We're going to literally do the same knot that we've been doing this whole project. So make one more knot in your loop. So we are literally going to make the same knot that we have been making. We are literally going to make the same knot that we have been making. So go ahead and make a loop in your leather, but don't pull it too tight. You want to hold your button up to the loop and line it up so that your knot will fall at about the same space as the button is large. This can be kind of tough, so when you have your knot, as you're laying them like this, when you have your knot close to where you think it will be, I recommend just pushing your button through the loop you've made so far to test the size, and then tightening it up or loosening it up as needed. This could be a little tighter, so I'm just going to scooch it forward and leave it where it is. Now make sure you can get your button back out. You want it to be tight enough that the button will stay in, but not so tight that you stretch the leather too much when you're getting your button out. And there you have it. I worry a little bit about my leather knots coming loose over time, so that's where the hypo cement comes in. It's really great flexible glue that will put in the knot and that will keep it from getting undone. Go ahead and place a little dab on each knot. And give it at least 20-25 minutes to dry. Once your glue is dry, you can clip your ends so that they are close to the button loop. I like to leave a little extra room in case I need to retie the knot, or if anything comes loose, I'll be able to fix it over time. So far, after making quite a few leather bracelets, I haven't had any trouble with leather knots coming undone, but it's always nice to be sure. There's your bracelet. So while we let that dry, I'm going to talk to you about the coolest part of this design. As much as I really like the fire polished glass beads, what I like even more is using this to make bracelets with the 2-hole beads. And what we can do with these 2-hole beads is make a similar bracelet, but use each hole of the bead to make a cool, funky design. Oh, I hate that. What we can do is string these 2-hole beads on the same way we did our fire polish to make a cool design. One thing you want to watch out for is, again, the 0.5mm leather will be different thicknesses depending on the color. I've got a really nice steel gray color here that tends to be a little thinner and will fit through more beads. The black and other very colorful colors will be a little harder to get through, and they're easier to use with fire polish. The best thing you can do is trial and error to see what will work for you. So I want to show you how we do this. These are 2-hole pyramid stud beads, really similar to the ones I used in this bracelet, just a little smaller size. What you want to do in stringing your beads on is make sure that the pyramid side is facing up, the same way it is in these sitting here, and just pass one side of your cord through one hole and the other through the second hole. And pull them tight. This could make a really cute little pyramid stud bracelet, similar to this one. We can also do honeycomb beads, which are really cute glass beads with 6 sides and little facets. They have 2 holes the same way that the pyramid ones do. So again, we just pass each side of the cord through and pull it tight. A few of those together would make a really cute design. These ones are called chaos beads, and again, they have 2 holes. I really like this one because once you get them on here, they make a cool little arrow shape, like this. I can imagine doing a whole wrap bracelet with just these neat little triangles. Another option are lentils, which are these nice round ones that have 2 holes. These will sit a little differently on your bracelet, and a good idea for these is to use them as spacers in between some of the other shapes. If you tried to string a bracelet with only these beads, it would take you quite a bit more beads to get through an entire bracelet since they sit this way on the bracelet. They make nice little spacers. And yet another option, as if there weren't enough already, are these 2-hole cabochon beads. They're flat on one side and have a dome on the other, and they come in a lot of really neat colors. Occasionally, you'll have trouble getting your leather through the hole, but just be patient and wiggle it through until it comes out the other side. Ta-da! Again, that could be a really cool look for a bracelet. I think my next project is going to be doing a multiple wrap bracelet using a lot of these little 2-hole guys. They're a lot of fun to work with, and you don't always want to do seed bead weaving every day. Sometimes, I know it sounds crazy, but it's nice to do a little different of a project with these glass beads. Maybe you're not a bead weaver and you like the look of these beads, but you don't want to do something that's overcomplicated. This is a great option for you. You can even put little spacers on each cord in between these beads as well. Really, the only limit is your imagination, which isn't very limited at all. Let's see how these look strung together. Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, there you have it. That's how you make these cute little leftover leather button bracelets. Thanks for joining me and learning this technique. If you'd like more info on all the cool beads and tools that I've used today, check out the links below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you stick around and check out more of our Patreon posts. Happy beading!